You see Tuskegee Road. That is a little road that is named after a Cherokee town out in western Carolina in Jackson County, which is in turn named after the Tuskegee River, which is basically is named after a river that means slow turtle, because the river moves really slow and very casual like.
I'm aware that poison ivy is all around us.
Yes, so there are free poison ivy samples. Feel free to put in your pockets. It keeps the mosquitoes off, so I like to rub it on my face. Everybody? Yes. So we're going to work this way right here. Okay. Welcome, friends, to the morning that changed everything. Come a little bit closer if you would. A little bit closer still. Wait, too close? Okay. You now stand where 245 years ago, neighbor fought neighbor, brother aimed his musket at another brother, and I'm so sorry.
The very fog.
Yes, but the very fog that would normally cling to this ground if it was cold and at nighttime or in the mornings, hit a savage battle between people who would end up deciding the fate of this country.
It was dawn, June 20th, 1780. The morning mist hung thick as death over Christian Reinhardt's farm. On this hill, 1,300 loyalists, men loyal to King George, had camped waiting to march south and join British General Cornwallis. Many were German immigrant settlers who'd found new lives in these Carolina hills. A quarter of them, 1/4 of them, did not have weapons. They used what they had. They had shovels and picks and axes.
But from the northeast, which is that way, because Charlotte's over there, from the northeast came 400 patriots. They were coming through the pre-dawn darkness. They had been traveling all night just to get here. They were led by Colonel Francis Locke, but they'd marched all night knowing that they were also outnumbered by the Loyalists 3-1. But they got here for a purpose. Why did they come here? Because the Loyalists had captured 20 patriots and were going to execute them this very morning.
Okay, listen. Do you hear the creak of the rope, the stamp of the nervous horse? Captain Falls and his cavalry rode straight into the Loyalist picket guard and just 30 steps from where the enemy slept. The fog was so thick, neither side could see who was friend or foe. Patriots, because they did not have uniforms, they were just wearing the normal clothes. The Patriots had a white paper pinned to their hats, and the Tories, they had twigs pinned to their hats. That was their only distinguishment between the two sides.
But in the confusion, you had brother fighting brother, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. But the battle raged on for 2 hours, or it starts early sometimes. And when they ran out of ammunition, muskets were used as clubs to beat each other to death with. They fought hand to hand. And the same hands that had shared in harvesting each other's fields that had known only prayer and plow until that time.
And when the fog lifted and when the smoke cleared, more than 70 lay dead and 200 were wounded, equally divided between both sides. You walk now where they fell. Feel the weight of that morning. They say on foggy nights like this, you can still hear the clash of steel, the cries of the wounded calling for their mothers.
They still no time for this.
And the scene you see here, this is the ambush itself that happened. Physically, it happened, they think, on the area where the football field is. It would have started there, going up the hill to where the school is now. So they would have been charging uphill at a crazy rate, just going completely intensely attacking the enemy. And I guess they're kind of done for the moment.
All right, you ready? All right, now we're going to head to Shuford's grave, which is right up this way. And Shuford was a loyalist.
Everybody say boo? Yeah, good job. Anybody who doesn't say boo gets shot with a big pistol. Here lies one whose story breaks the heart. John Martin Shuford, known to some people as Crooked Nose, was a man who was not unfamiliar with violence. Many years before this battle happened, Mr. Shuford here had decided to hang a loyalist named Isaac Wise. He had gone to fish the rope himself on his horse. The horse stumbled, he fell, broke his nose, but he still got up to go back and make sure the deed was done. In other words, to hang the guy.
He's burning up with fever. His wound's gone bad. Mrs. Reinhardt, what else can we do?
We pray, and we'll sing him to peace. Even those that we disagree with deserve the Christian mercy in their final moments.
I fought for my king, for order, and for the crown that gave us law.
Why did the neighbors have to fight each other?
Sometimes good people see the world in different ways. And sometimes those differences, they cut too deep.
Will someone please go and find my wife? I wish to stay here until my wife comes.
And Shuford died here on June 22nd, 1780, 2 days after the battle, from the wounds that festered and would not heal. Many people left this battle with wounds that would not heal. It was hard to rebuild and reunite, but listen to these women sing. In the aftermath of such hatred, such violence, they still found room for mercy. The same hands that loaded muskets for their husbands now tend enemy wounds, because some things, compassion, human dignity, must survive even when everything else dies.
Some say his spirit wanders the area still, not searching for vengeance, but for the understanding that eluded him in life. Perhaps wondering if the cause was worth the cost.
This is what an encampment would look like.
Minus the car.
And this is the grave of John Martin Shuford. The original footstone is behind it. I believe the original headstone is at the cultural center presently. But his descendants put up this beautiful marker for him. It says, "My day is come, my blast is gone, my resting place is here. Now caution take before too late, for death is always nigh." And you'll notice throughout the battleground, we're not going to get to the captain's grave, but you're going to notice British flags, and again those resemble the Loyalists, and you will see American flags, which represent the Whigs. And if you turn that way, you're going to see a cabin, you're going to see a smokehouse, and let's just imagine that there are stables. This is not the original cabin of Christian Reinhardt, but it is a replica. I believe they assembled it in the 90s to represent the story. What happened was, like I said earlier, when during the aftermath, after the fighting, the women came and they rushed and they took care of the wounded and the dying. And so Betsy Reinhardt's home became a hospital. Her stables were filled with people, her smokehouse was filled with people, and she would wrap the dead with her quilt, and so they could go home.
Now, they say this is the Battle of Ramsour Mill. Obviously, that's a wheat mill, but it wasn't actually physically on this land. This has all been kind of condensed. The actual mill itself, I think, is about a mile over that way on the other side of the creek. Back then, if you think about it, they didn't have all the cool ways that we had to hang out now, you know, computers or whatever, restaurants, coffee shops. Back then, the only common areas were post office. This is before post offices even existed. So they might have had something like that, maybe a tavern, but the local mill was like the hotspot for socializing, I should say. Yeah, so people come there, and this entire area was called Ramsour's Mill because that's the main feature of it. Everybody that's a farmer would bring all their stuff here to get the wheat and the corn processed, so they go about their business. But while you're waiting for that to be done, you've got to hang around for a couple hours. So this became a place for people to hang out as a social thing, play checkers, you name it. It was also a good place for people to have political debates that might get a little heated, might turn into a little ambush, who knows?
And Christian Reinhardt, he was actually a tanner. They made things out of leather, like boots and stuff. And if you look up here is, the address here is 1780 Tuckasegee Road. Yeah, and it is the same road that would have taken you to Charlotte. And that's how the 400 came from the east. The battle happened on the east side, up on that hill, and up on that hill you're going to see the Whigs grave site there, where several of the captains were buried. However, most of them their bodies were claimed. I know that Isabella Falls, she rode her horse with her slave to this area, and she claimed her husband's body. He was wrapped in Betsy Reinhardt's quilt. She put his body on the horse and rode back to Mount Morn. And if you go to Mount Morn and exit 33, where Mount Morn is, at Center Presbyterian Church, that's where he is currently buried. And actually, Captain Falls was the first one to fall, to die in the battle.
Now, didn't this all used to be swampland?
I know that there was a mill pond, and there was a creek and a river. I know at some point the topography had changed due to some flooding and a blizzard.
On the day of the incident of the battle, the area that's the football field near the high school stadium, that is thought to be the lower part of the field going up this hill to the actual battleground school. Battleground being called battleground because that's the actual battleground. But I'm sure it ranged all over the place, people chasing each other down. But as the British fled, we know that that part of the field where there was a pond at the time was also flooded because an unknown number of British ran in that direction. Remember, it was very foggy. So they ran in that direction and they ended up falling in the pond, in the water, and then they've got their friend behind them who's trying to run over them. So a lot of people died drowning, just trying to get away. So we know that area was flooded, and then the whole area changes over time. Mother Nature does that. The battle itself, it happened in waves. The very first wave, all this happened in about 2 hours. There was 3 separate charges up the hill and to the battleground itself. By the time the third one happened, a lot of people had dispersed. If you weren't gone, you were dead, you were wounded. So at that point, a nice organized charge up the hill wasn't really an option. It just broke down into man-to-man combat, hand-to-hand, everybody kill whoever you can. And we have Revolutionary era ice cream available from Papa's Cold Cow.
now the names of those who fell at Ramsour Mill on this day, June the 20th, in the year of our Lord 1780. Captain John Bowman of the Continental Army. His wife Grace rode 40 miles with their 11-month-old babe to reach his side before he died. Nicholas Warlick and his brother Philip, loyalists both buried side by side. Peter Costner, killed by his own brother Thomas, who loved him enough to bury his body with his own hands.
How could someone hurt his own family?
War makes monsters of all of us, child. Makes us forget we're family.
George Shuford, Abraham Forney, Israel Sane.
We remember them. We speak their names.
70 souls confirmed dead, perhaps more whose names are lost to time. Patriots and loyalists alike, buried together in the end, because death makes equals of us all.
Brother fought brother that day. William Simpson, a patriot, had hurried to come and kill his brother, Reuben. Families that were split by allegiances, by principles, stronger than blood. This war was not a war of strangers, it was a civil war amongst family. It divided churches, homes, and family tables.
I want to add to that, William was a patriot, he was a scout, and his brother was Reuben, he was a Tory, and William was out scouting that day, and he heard the shots fired here, and he rushed his horse as fast as that horse could go, just rushed him until finally it exhausted, and he got off that horse and he ran as fast as he could because he was determined to kill his brother Reuben. And finally when he got here, the battle was over, so he didn't get the opportunity to kill his brother Reuben. Thank goodness. So his mother was really, yeah.
Listen, when the wind is right, they say you can still hear the crier calling those names, ensuring that even in death, the fallen are not forgotten. Each name a story, each story a family. Each family a wound in the community that took generations to heal.
And we're going to head up towards the mass grave, which is right up here. It's a little bit of a hike. Y'all have any questions?
Here in England to sell back and forth with news and new forces, it takes months, years sometimes. So the battle had already been going on for a while, but when Cornwallis and a man named Henry Clinton, Brigadier General Henry Clinton, they arrived in Charleston in May of this year. And they conquered Charleston with ease because they had a huge force. They had plenty of army guys, they had plenty of ships. They conquered Charleston, and Cornwallis stayed here with his army, and Henry Clinton sailed north to New York, and that's how they kind of boxed in George Washington from north and south. But Cornwallis made a couple mistakes, and later he said so in his memoirs that it was a blunder, which is big for him. He's a very professional, he's like the perfect general, so for him to admit it is a big thing. But he waited around in part for the harvest to come in, so they could harvest all the grain and take it with them in the army, so the army could have something to eat. But while they were doing that, obviously Ramsour's Mill happened. But so basically a month after they got here in Charleston, this happened, and where Cornwallis thought they were going to have North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia completely locked down and completely under royal control again, they were wrong. So now instead of having George Washington in the middle, like a north and south sandwich, you had this big gaping hole behind Cornwallis where he now had to scramble and divert people and time and energy to that, which let George Washington do his thing and run around and start trying to win these little battles for himself.
Now, how did this affect the outcome of the Battle of Kings Mountain?
Okay, they will say that this is a war, the biggest war, the biggest battle never heard of, and the reason why is because some people see it as a skirmish, but it really was a battle, and it really changed the trajectory and the morale, and it really gave spirit to those patriots because they were going against the British Army or the British military. But watch out, Bart.
And at the time, the British military was the world's biggest superpower ever. At the time, they had land and territories and subjects all over the world. They literally said the sun never sets on the British Empire because it didn't. You would have somebody in New Zealand or Australia or India, wherever it was, the British Empire always had the sun shining down on it. So that's a pretty ostentatious, pretty powerful thing. So a lot of the guys, especially the ones that were sitting here, they thought we're going to come out there, we're going to hang out, we're going to pretend to drill for war. It's already as good as won because there had been no major victories against the British. So a lot of the British got kind of cocky. It's kind of the curse of success. Yeah. If you think you can't lose, that's what happens right before you lose. And that's what happened here.
Those guys, we're 400, we can scatter those 1,300. Just think what we can do, and they did it at Kings Mountain. They took that spirit with them.
It definitely became a morale booster, like kind of a battle cry, because when you see it done the first time, everybody was, they were serious about it, but the chances of it happening are low. So when the Patriots managed to pull it off, it was a huge uplifting moment. So that morale, that fighting spirit, that whole, oh my gosh, we've got hope. Hope can be a dangerous thing, especially to a tyrant. So we had hope. We started fighting more. We started organizing more. Started getting more motivated. Next thing you know, we went from Ramsour's Mill, Kings Mountain, cow pens, and on and on. So it built up momentum.
Now I've heard that the Revolutionary War would have been lost if the Battle of Kings Mountain had been lost. Is that true, or?
It's quite possible. And also, there was a momentum because it's like links in a chain. This is the first link in the chain. So if this hadn't happened, Kings Mountain likely would not have happened. Now we do have a local historian here, Mr. William Young, from Our Living History channel on YouTube.
I've heard of him.
He's like a celebrity. Don't get his autograph, but he does have a channel. Yeah. And
cool, very nice.
He covers a lot of these things in detail. He'll pick out the specific events and go from there. Everything from their cooking styles, their mating and courting rituals, right?
Yeah, cooking.
Different things from all the cultural aspects of that time.
Families didn't come claim because the families were too far away. I know that Adam Torrance the first is here, and I listened to Ann Dellinger talk, and she has a relative who's actually buried in this mass grave. And for a long time, I thought the mass grave just had people that we didn't really know, but for whatever reason, those people are here. The people couldn't claim them, but some people they couldn't recognize them. They didn't know where they were from, and because they didn't have a uniform, they couldn't really tell if they were burying loyalists or patriots. So now they're all together in one.
And one thing that made it hard to distinguish who was who, whether it's not just the person, but also which side were they on, is the fact that during that fog, during the battle, everybody put something in their hat, a little piece of white paper or a little green twig, which meant in the fog, you might not see the person, but if you see that piece of white paper and you're British, you're going to shoot at that paper. Vice versa, we're going to be shooting at the twigs. So that meant that a lot of the shots, which you would normally aim for the body back in the day because the rifles weren't very accurate. So you might get a better shot, better chance of hitting them here. But in the dark and in the fog, you're like, oh, there's a little piece of paper. Boom. So there was a lot of headshots.
And that's how Adam Torrance died. He took a musket ball to the head, and his son watched it happen, and he took a musket ball to the hip. And the cool thing about Adam Torrance the First, he owned a tavern called Torrance's Tavern, which is up towards Lake Norman, Mount Bourne area, and there was a skirmish there with the Patriots and the Loyalists.
During the race
musket
of the
balls
Dan.
to the face make it hard to tell you who you are.
I remember some guy got like 4 or 5 musket balls in his body, and they were able to get 4 of them out, and it took 40 years, but the last one finally came out on its own.
Oh my goodness.
Souls, maybe more. We stopped counting when the light went down.
Patriots and loyalists together because we couldn't tell them apart. Death wore away their differences. Young and old, fathers and sons, all equal in the grave.
My husband says this is sacred ground now, not because of what they died for, but because of how we honor them after. They say the dirt here is different now, rich and dark. Some say it's because of how much it holds, but I think it's because it's absorbed so much grief, so much love and sorrow.
How do we move forward? How do we live with the neighbors whose brothers we've buried, whose fathers we've killed?
One day at a time, one act of mercy at a time. We'll plant gardens where we planted the dead, and we'll raise children who know peace instead of war. I hear them at night, sometimes a whisper in the wind. Not angry voices, but lonely ones. I think they're asking us to remember not how they died, but what they loved and who they left behind.
Then we remember. We tell their stories. We make sure their sacrifice means something.
The unclaimed dead were buried in a long, deep trench on the west side of the hill. Unable to distinguish the difference between loyalist and patriot, they were all buried together. Today, children play soccer where these warriors sleep. The past, the present, layered like sediment, each generation building on the bones of the last.
They say on certain nights when the moon is dark and the air is still, you can see them rising from the ground, not as enemies, but as men who've learned too late that the things that divided them were smaller than the things that made them human.
This mass grave stands as witness. In death, all causes are reduced to dust, all armies to silence, all hatred to hollowness. What remains is the choice each living soul must make: to repeat the hatred of the past or to plant the seeds of peace in the future.
We won't go there, but there's a memorial over there for the Warlick brothers.
Yeah, it's over there. It has a very beautiful tombstone with a lot of information written on it. Let's see. We're going Act 5.
Maybe we're going to go this way. But those brothers were buried together along with their neighbor Israel Saint. And they were fighting together. And from what I understand was, they were loyalists. And one thing I read was that Colonel Locke was so impressed by those boys and how they fought that he gave them a proper burial in that grave.
He actually stood over them and made sure that they were given proper services. They're one of the few people who actually got their own grave. John Martin Shuford, of course, was one of them. Some people will note that in the battle, all the bodies that were strewn everywhere, and that the scene that you saw there where he was waiting for his wife to show up, we don't know if he lived long enough for her to show up, but we think not, because she, for hours and days, stayed and looked at all the dead bodies, trying to identify the one that was her. She identified him openly. So they went through the bodies. She found the one that was missing that, and that helped her figure out it was her husband. Again, musket balls to the face and everywhere else, make a big mess.
Wow.
So she was able to make sure his body was given the services and of a private grave. Warlicks, they were pretty well to do and well known. They had a pretty good accounting of themselves during the war, like Ms. Holland said. So they got the rights of being identified. The people that fought here, not all of them were put in the mass grave because they were unidentifiable. Some were just simply too far away. By the time news travels from point A all the way up to Virginia or wherever, it's been weeks or months. So to come back and try to claim your body when it's been left out, you can't leave it out that long. Plus there's the expense of transporting the body. There were people who came and saw that their husbands died, but one woman and her son came. Who was that? The woman and her child came on horseback, but they couldn't transport the husband back to their hometown. So they saw them, gave them the last rites, and then they had them buried.
And this area just about did not happen. There's a guy named Dave Strom, and he really wanted to preserve this area. Yeah, they put a school here, but he fought really hard, and the legend has it that he tethered himself to a bulldozer until the city would listen to him and preserve it. So if you go to the other side of the school, there's a park with some millstones there, and it is called Strom Park. And Kelly Withrow is the principal here, and she's done an amazing job to make her kids really understand why they are called battleground.
You guys are here to finish it off on a good note, right?
The army wouldn't take us who have womanly nature and otherwise weak, but every army needs its bards, its keepers of memory.
War has many sounds, muskets, cannons, screams, and steels. But who will play the sound of the dead? Who will play the melody of the living?
We were there when the fog rolled in, thick as a burial shroud. We watched as the loyalists creeped in like spirits. We watched as neighbors turned into wolves.
That battle lasted 2 hours, but its echoes go on forever. Every family in these parts carries a scar from that day. Some lost fathers, some lost sons, and some lost the very idea that neighbors can trust neighbors.
But just 3 days after that battle, you will not find this in history books. Widows and children gathered at Elizabeth Reinhardt's cabin. They ate what little food they had left together. The children played, and the women mended each other's clothes.
Music has power. It can carry pain, yes, but it can also carry healing. The same voice that screams in battle could also sing lullabies to the orphaned children. The same hands that hold muskets could also pluck gentle melodies from strings.
We play for the dead, so that we might tell their stories. We play for the living, so they might remember them. And we play for the yet to be born, so that they might learn from our mistakes.
responsibility of those who remember. Honor that trust. Choose the better path. Be the peace you wish to see.
The ghosts of Ramsour's Mill are not here to frighten you, but to remind you that we are all more alike than different, all more neighbor than enemy, and all more human than the causes we claim to die for.
Good night, friends. Thank you for being here, and may you sleep peacefully, and may they sleep peacefully as well.